This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about reading resilience, empowering parents with 4 strategies to support struggling readers. And my guest today is Dr. Emily Levy. Dr. Emily is... I just lost my page here, is the founder and director of EBL Coaching, a specialized tutoring program that offers individualized one-on-one home, virtual, and on-site instruction using research-based multisensory techniques. She's also the author of Strategies for Success, a 22-part student workbook series that teaches students strategies for test taking, note taking, reading comprehension, writing, summarizing, and executive functioning, along with Flags and Stars, Orton-Gillingham student workbook series, which helps students develop their fundamental decoding and spelling skills. Additionally, she's the author of Flags and Stars Multisensory Math, a multisensory math program that helps students develop a stronger understanding of core math concepts, including addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and fractions. Wow, that was a mouthful, Emily. You are a busy lady. I'm glad that you are here and having this conversation with us. It's one that I am super excited about. So thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Absolutely, yes, and we have a lot of guests with us today. People popping on live. We are live right now on. Looks like Facebook might be having some issues. We'll might have to rebroadcast there. But we are definitely on YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram, and it looks like on a couple other places too. So if you're joining us, have some questions about reading, or just maybe want to share that you're struggling with an emerging reader or a struggling reader, put some comments into the feed wherever you're watching. We would love to know where you're at, just how this conversation can help you, and maybe some things we can address along the way. We've got a few notes, but that's why we go live. So we want you to be part of this conversation as well. So, Dr. Emily, I usually ask my guests when they first come on just to tell us a little bit about your background, why you are passionate about helping students in general, and maybe passionate specifically about this topic of reading too. I'd love to know that.
Sure. Well, I've been the founder and director of EBL Coaching for really over 20 years now.
That's
And
amazing.
our specialty really is working with students who have learning challenges, attentional challenges, various types of special education needs. And a very big part of what we do is reading remediation. So many of our kids struggle with reading, whether it's decoding basic words, reading fluency, reading comprehension, really all aspects of reading. And we found that when we use the right approach, the right research-based, multisensory structured approach, the results that we see are amazing. And so I've just developed this passion for really being able to help so many kids build their reading skills using the right approach that's really individualized to their needs.
Yes, individualized. I think that's really important because I think a lot of parents, and I know just from my own background, it's like you're searching, you're hunting. I need a program that works for my child, and you buy one, it doesn't work, so you buy another one, and a lot of those still need to be customized to that student. And I think it's a hard thing to hear because we just want that quick fix to say, yes, I found the magic bullet, and now my child's going to be a tremendous reader. But it is a process and of growing and learning with your student, and what a delight that people have you as a resource to help them along that way. And you've even written some books. And so I'm just excited for all that you have to share with us today, just about just helping students to learn to read. And I'm assuming learning to love to read as well, not just
Absolutely.
like getting through that task and then, saying, okay, we did it, and setting it aside.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's not just one element. And by the way, to your point
Mhm.
that you mentioned before, it's not just even selecting the right program that's best for your child, but it's
Mm.
individualizing every step of the way. Some kids
Yeah.
need more time on a certain lesson, less time on another, really kind of
Mm.
gauging how they're responding and spending the right amount of time on each aspect of the program accordingly.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of give and take in teaching, and, I think that is especially as you're teaching multiple children in a home. I know that perspective of, homeschooling, and it's like, "Oh, I don't even know, how this one's doing," but it really is worth our effort to really, like you said, gauge and kinda get that feedback every day, and it's not gonna be the same every day. Lessons, just one lesson can a child can, like, just breeze through it, and the next day you go, "What what happened?"
Absolutely. That happens all the time. Yes.
Yes, yeah, so parents, you're not alone if you're feeling like, "Why is this going on?"
Definitely not alone.
That's a
That's for
normal thing.
Yes, yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So, what would be the most fundamental thing that a parent should do to 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 kinda help a child embrace the concept even of reading?
Sure. Well, I think there's different aspects to that question. So I think first off, if a child is struggling to learn how to read from the
Hmm,
get-go, then it's important to be proactive and say, you know what, I'm noticing that my child is really not able to decode words and she's in
right.
first grade, she or he. So it's really kind of identifying from the get-go that there's a challenge and then taking
Hmm,
action. So I think there's that
yeah.
piece of it. There might be other kids that are fine with decoding, but they really struggle to comprehend. They're able to
Hmm,
focus on the mechanics of reading, but can't quite grasp what they're reading. So I think that's kind of the
right.
first key component in helping a child who's struggling with reading is identifying where the holes are and then
Right.
from there figuring out the plan of action to address
Mm,
those key areas.
right. Yes. There's so much involved with the reading process itself, and it's so complex. I know in years past, I've done some broadcasts with people that kind of broke it down into all those little parts, and it kind of just makes your mind hurt when you think about everything that is involved in the reading process, and yet we somehow think if we can just put some words and some simple concepts in front of our kids that it's just going to like absorb, and it just doesn't.
It's very, very rare that that happens. Some
Hmm.
extremely gifted kids are able to kind of pick up on reading, but really
Yeah.
most kids need that direct instruction to learn how to read,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I had that with my third child. She just picked it up and started reading at 3. Oh,
right?
it was such a gift after having to teach my older 2.
That gave you a little bit of a break, I'm sure.
Right, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So what about just spending time reading to our kids versus having them read? What is the benefit to that, and how does that help them eventually to become a better reader over time?
Sure. Well, I think the answer to that is it partially depends on the age of the child. Of course, for little
Ah,
kids who are non-readers, they're not able to read yet, really just learning to love books and love language and
mhm.
understanding that we turn pages from left to right and that there are words on the page.
Ah,
Those are key skills for little kids who are not quite ready to learn yet. So
mhm.
lots of reading, lots of exposure to language and books is so important. Then
Yeah.
when the kids start to read very basic books, I think it's important to do a combination of having them read some of those very basic books like Bob books or books that have
Mm,
basic decodable words that may not be as language rich, but allows them
right.
to practice their reading skills, along
Mhm.
with you reading language rich books to them. So there are so many
Oh,
great books that
yes.
will build their comprehension and build their love for reading that they
Mhm.
won't necessarily be able to read at a young age. So really doing that combination. And then
Yeah.
as students get older, I think obviously we want them to do more and more reading, have them read out loud. Sometimes in the beginning, we might do a combination with a chapter book where the child reads a page and then the parent reads a page, or they alternate
Yeah.
child reads to the parent. So really kind of continuing with the love for language and books and reading by reading to your child, but also encouraging them to read on their own and really building their confidence, really wowing them with, oh,
Yes.
look at this book that you were able to read a month ago. You couldn't even read one word from here, and now you
Mm,
read the whole book. So really kind of building their confidence and their joy for reading by showing them those little milestones.
absolutely. You talked about confidence. How much is confidence integrated into the reading process itself?
I think confidence is a huge part of it. There's so many
Hmm.
kids I see that might actually know how to read, but they second guess themselves all the time. They might
Huh.
turn to their parent and say, kind of decode the word, but then not confidently. And they kind of look to their parent to give them reassurance that that was correct. And the parent is there kind of nodding their head. So we want to really
Right.
build their independence and their own confidence in their reading. And we
Hmm.
found that as students build that confidence, in turn, they also learn to love reading and they find joy
Yeah.
able to comprehend the material, and they're really able to love the books that they read rather than just
Hmm.
for the sake of reading.
Yeah, yeah. It has to become that eventually because we don't want to do things we struggle in. And so the more that your student struggles, of course, the more they're going to say, "Oh, I don't want to do that, and that's just too hard." And we want it to be fun and engaging, and so I love that suggestion of when they get to that point of reading a page and then having them read a page because I think it does get fatiguing, doesn't it, too, to certain students? And
Yeah,
yeah.
especially those who struggle to decode words. They have to put so
Mm.
much energy into reading each word that it's exhausting. And sometimes they also miss out on the comprehension. So, in addition
Oh,
to them
yes.
reading a page, I always like to also ask them questions about what they read to make
Oh,
sure that
uh-huh.
they understood the material and they weren't just reading again for the sake of reading.
Right. Yeah, that's a super important stopping point because yes, we can just go, okay, we're done with the book. We finished it and then yes, they may have read the text, but did they understand any of the text that they read? And to going back over that. Do you have any pointers for helping a student with comprehension issues?
Sure, absolutely. Well, there's several things that we can do. One is if they're reading a chapter book, it's really important to stop every page or every 2 to 3 pages and really self reflect, either
Hmm.
just in their mind, what did I read about? What were the characters that were introduced? Or sometimes even using little post it notes of writing a quick little summary of what they read and stick it in the book. And then at the end of each
Ah.
chapter, again, they should self reflect, they should summarize what they read.
Mhm.
Sometimes we even do character charts and a setting chart and really make
Hmm.
sure that they processed and understood what they were reading. And then in terms
Right.
of discussions, we can also talk about higher levels of reading comprehension, making
Hmm.
predictions, making inferences. Why do we think that happened? What do we think might happen next?
Hmm.
Really engaging with the text. When
Right.
students are reading individual passages, like a social studies passage or
Hmm.
nonfiction passage, sometimes we'll teach them an active reading strategy, like rather than just reading and then answering comprehension questions, we might teach them to identify 3 key elements. The first is the
Okay.
topic, which is really what the passage is about, and we learn to highlight
Mhm.
the topic in blue. Then the main idea is what the author is saying about the topic, and we'll highlight that in green. And
Mm,
then we'll go through the passage and highlight the important salient details in yellow.
hmm.
And sometimes we'll even talk about, is this an important detail or is it not an important detail, that issue of
Ah,
saliency. So it's again
right.
teaching them to not be passive readers, but really to be active readers and to be
Hmm.
actively engaged in the text, which really helps to build their reading comprehension skills.
Absolutely. Yes, because 'cause they're really interacting with those words even. I found that helped my kids become better writers in the long run because then they were able to say, "Oh, I can take these words out of the text and put them in my own words, and then it makes more sense to me what was really going on there." But they didn't feel like they had to, like, recreate the wheel and, like, write something about what you just read. It's like, "Oh, no, I've got all these words already, and I can just take them out and then use them as a starting block." And wow, opened huge doors for my non-creative, especially my non-creative engineering child.
Absolutely. And writing is very much connected to reading comprehension. And some kids, like you alluded to, they don't even know how to start with writing. So sometimes having
Right.
text to work with will give them a nice starting point for how to begin the writing
Mhm.
process.
Yeah, yeah, those are some great tips. I love the Post-it note thing,
Mm,
on the pages because you feel like you do get this our kids can become so overloaded with information or, maybe they're just getting lost up in the story too, which is great, but then they tend to forget some details as well because they're just going through it so fast. So good skills on either side for maybe it's even a good reader who just tends to kind of breeze through everything and miss those details.
And also kids who have attention challenges and might just be distracted
Yes.
as they're reading. It forces them to stop, to reflect, and to make sure they didn't miss any of the key components of the story.
Right. Yes. So what about other multisensory types of things to do to help kids with reading in general, or I guess anything else that you can think of that would make that process a little more enjoyable or a little less stressful?
Sure. Well, I think a multisensory approach is key, especially for struggling learners, but really
Hmm.
all kids benefit from it. And they actually really enjoy learning with a multisensory approach because they're
Huh.
not just sitting and listening to a teacher or working out of a workbook, but their senses are actively engaged. So, for example,
Ah.
for younger kids who are learning letter formations, the names of the letters and their corresponding sounds, we might take out a tray of sand or a tray of colored sand or flour or
Hmm.
salt or anything that's tactile and teach them letter formations by tracing those letters in the sand. So again, rather than just working out of a
Ah.
workbook, we might say that when we write the letter C, we go around and we'll actually trace that with our fingers in the sand, which they can
Hmm.
do at a beach or at a park also. And then we
Right.
might skywriting and we might say, now let's stand up and use our big gross motor muscles. And in the sky, we trace the letter C. And then to bring
Hmm.
it to another level, we might have a key picture that goes along with the sound for the letter C. So we might have a
Huh.
flashcard with C on the front and a picture of a cat on the back. And we say, this is the letter C. It makes the sound k like cat. So again, we're really engaging
Hmm.
senses, also engaging
Right.
the kids because they enjoy the process, but really
Right.
helping to solidify those skills into their long-term memories.
Absolutely. Yes, and enjoying a process, enjoying the task just makes learning skyrocket.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, yes, and there's so many I mean, kids are made to play, and I know I've had many conversations over the years, just about that aspect, but when we take play out of and the joy out of the learning, we make learning really hard much harder for our kids instead of easier. We just have to learn ourselves as parents how to play a little bit more, I think.
There's so many ways to integrate learning into play. Like we can take a
Mm,
beach ball and we can write letters all around it. We throw the
hmm,
beach ball, and whoever catches it has to say the sound that that letter makes or has to read a word on
right.
there. So they feel like they're playing ball, but at the same time, they're practicing their reading skills. So there's definitely a way to
Absolutely.
fuse the two and make it really fun and engaging for the kids.
Yeah, yeah, so many great ideas. Yes, and I know that over the years I got better with that. And so if you're a parent who's struggling with having fun, just know your kids will teach you how to do that and it's necessary for them and you as well.
Kids are good at that. Yes.
Yes. So we had a couple questions from viewers, and this kind of hits on the next topic. So I thought I would bring it up. But Shayla had asked when we sent our email out last night about the show. She responded back that she wanted to know if there are any curriculums that you would recommend for emergent or pre-readers, and then I'd like you to kind of piggyback on that with just structured reading programs and the importance of them.
Sure. Well, first up, I'm very much of a believer in structured reading programs. Even for kids who don't have a diagnosis, who don't struggle, I believe that kids respond very well to structure as long as we keep it multisensory and engaging for them. With
Yeah.
that said, I love the Orton-Gillingham method. It was originally designed for students who have dyslexia, but we
Hmm.
have used this method on all kids, and kids love it, and it's incredibly effective. It's one
Yeah.
example of a structured, research-based a multisensory reading program and can
Mhm.
be used as young as preschool level, really for pre-readers, for
Really?
emerging readers.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And the beginning concepts really surround learning to identify the names of the letters, their corresponding sounds, how to form each letter properly so we can try to be
Mm,
proactive and avoid reversals that many kids will have
right.
that can be developmental. But if we teach them proactively how to properly structure each letter, we can prevent that. And then
Hmm.
eventually we work on how to blend those sounds together to form words. And we might take out magnetic tiles and work on blending with those, or a little whiteboard, or
Mm-hmm.
flashcards that have letters on them. So again, we're engaging the senses. There's lots of games
Right.
that are part of it. The kids enjoy it, but at the same time, it's structured, it's proactive, it's systematic, and it's
Hmm.
really building those foundations of reading at a very young age.
Yeah. Yes. I never even thought of, yeah, that it could be something that you could use that young and that it would, include all of those concepts or tasks for the pre-reading and emergent readers. Yeah. So so there's a lot to be to think about when you're introducing that, and how much nicer to have that research-based background to somebody saying this works, and these are the concepts that build on other concepts, and instead of trying to recreate the wheel while you're sitting there with all these workbooks in front of you going, what do we do next?
Exactly. And it's like building a house. If we don't have those foundations of reading intact at a young age, it only becomes that much more challenging as they move through school.
Yes, yeah, the gaps get bigger, and then you realize them, and going back and trying to figure out where they are is more difficult. So yes, if you have a child that even struggles. So what would you say to a parent who has a child with maybe a more severe learning challenge, and reading's going to be delayed a ways? How do they use a program that is structured like that, to still, because I know a lot of parents are like, our goal is that my child reads, by but some point, like late teens,
Mm,
early adulthood.
sure.
Um, and so how do they structure the introduction of that program and then use that, still for that same child, in a way that would work for their ability to learn new skills?
Sure. Well, we do work with many students who have severe special education needs. And like you said, they're not able to read until they're in their teens or they're adults. So we're very familiar with that kind of population of students.
Mhm.
And really, the idea is using the same approach, using a program like Orton-Gillingham, a systematic, structured, multisensory approach, but being
Mhm.
very diagnostic and prescriptive in the approach in which it's taught.
Okay.
Meaning, it might take an entire week or longer for the student to learn the letter C and the sound that goes along with C and how to form that letter. It might take a
Hmm.
month, and that's okay. We're going to move at their pace. When they're ready to
Right.
move on to the next letter, we do that. When they're ready to start blending three sounds together, we might only teach them four consonants and one short vowel in 6 months. And then we work
Yeah.
on just how to blend those sounds together to form a basic word. And that's
Mm.
it's really about moving at their pace, giving them as much time as they need and as little time as they can, is what I always like
Right. Uh-huh.
for them to meet their own milestones, which might be very different than the milestones of another child or another adult for that matter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's really important information to kind of absorb as a parent, just too, that it is going to maybe take longer, and you do have to focus a lot more time just on a single lesson and those concepts, and not rush it, because I think we get anxious, and then we start to kind of move our child faster than they should be moving, and it's not, it doesn't help anybody in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Part of it's having patience and understanding that it just may take a lot longer for a particular child than another to grasp a concept.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's where, having somebody come in as a tutor, or just somebody who can help write out a series of lesson plans using a structured program. So I know you do this a lot. You pair up people with tutors and things. So what would a parent be looking for if they had a child that struggles? They're looking for that kind of help. What kind of questions should they ask? and information that they need to share about their child in order to make that relationship really effective in helping, not only the child, but also themselves as a parent to be able to teach their child at home.
Sure. Well, first off, I think if a parent chooses to bring on a tutor, it's really important that it's not just a generic tutor or someone who's helped with homework, but really someone who specializes in a particular approach to teaching
Mm.
reading and has that systematic approach. I have many parents that come to me and say, I had this tutor, and every week was a different lesson and nothing built upon itself, and we didn't really see any
Mhm.
progress. So really having that systematic approach that starts with the foundations and really builds upwards from there
Yeah.
definitely makes a difference. So I think really making sure it's someone who has the right approach, has the right
Mhm.
methodology that they'll be using with your child. I also do
Right.
think it's really important to share as much information with the tutor about your child. If
Mm.
is there a diagnosis, if they're comfortable sharing an IEP, any
Mm.
evaluations, talking to the tutor about how your child learns best. Are there certain approaches that work well? Do we need to build in little breaks? So really understanding both the needs of the child, but also approaches that have worked in the past. I think really arming the tutor with that information initially is really helpful.
Yeah.
And then the
Mm.
other
Mhm.
piece is that depending on the frequency of the tutoring, if the parent is open to reinforcing what is
Mm.
covered in each session, we find that progress just skyrockets when they get
Oh,
that
that's
reinforcement
amazing.
in
Yes.
each session.
Uh-huh.
I think just really encouraging the parent to really speak to the tutor or find out what they're working on, which materials that they're using, and what they can do
Mhm.
in between sessions to reinforce the concepts. Even if it's just playing a learning game that reinforces what they covered during the last session, that's okay. Just having some kind of reinforcement so there's continuity and consistency with the instruction.
Yes, yes, the less confusing you can make it for the student, the better.
Definitely.
Yes, and we find that same thing goes for therapies and a whole bunch of things. The more the parent gets involved and reinforces at home, that you multiply many times the effectiveness of having that professional come in, because they're guiding, but they don't live in your home. And they're not with your student all the time like you are.
Right.
So that is extremely helpful, and the most effective way to use those funds, to really help your student too, instead of just saying, okay, sit in front of this computer now and work with this person, and it's my hour off to maybe work with your siblings, but to really be engaged. Yes, and that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a couple questions from viewers or that were submitted ahead of time that were very similar to each other, and it had to do with interest in reading. The first one was submitted by Nicole, and she said, "How can I get my daughter more interested in reading?" And then Lisa asked, "How can I help a child who has no desire to read and thinks it's too hard?" So I think these are just, how can we get our children past even that roadblock of just thinking about reading?
Sure. Those are both good questions. And of course, reading is so important. It builds so many skills,
Mm.
vocabulary, decoding, so many aspects of it. And I think part of the key to engaging a child and helping them to enjoy reading is to find topics that they're really interested in. It could be anything. It
Ah,
could be
yes.
mermaids or dinosaurs, or it could be nonfiction topics or the moon or whatever it is.
Mm.
And then really finding different types of books that are on that topic. And some of them might be books that you read to your child, and other ones might be books that they read to themselves. But
Mm.
if they're interested in the topic, they're more likely to get engaged in the text than if it's some
Yeah.
random topic that they find to be boring and that they can't
Mm.
relate to at all. So
Right.
really trying to start with those topics is
Mm.
really key. And it might be that you're reading a newspaper and you find an article on a topic that they're interested in and you
Hmm.
engage them with that, or on the internet or a novel. It could come from different places, but I think
Right.
starting with topics that they're interested in is definitely key in helping to engage them.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Whether you're interested or not, it's always interest-based learning is so amazing and opens so many. It opens your student to going through some of those hard things, because they're so interested in the topic or the concept that they kind of push through that harder stuff that they wouldn't have otherwise. Yes. I have a story that I had sat down with one parent. She was ready to give up homeschooling this last summer. And I said, how about you take all the books that you picked out and put them aside and ask your daughter what she wants to learn about? And she came back to me within less than a week after she had done that. And she goes, you would not believe this child is asking me questions. She wants to learn more and she wants more books. And
It's
just
amazing what that can do.
it's quite amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
And then it gives them the skills that can be transferred to other topics and other books and other materials. So it's really
Exactly.
building those skills through topics they're interested in.
Yes, and they will move on. They
Well,
oftentimes won't get stuck there for too long. Yes. So, yeah. So can we talk about dyslexia a little bit? Because I know a lot of kids who do struggle that it ends up being the diagnoses that a child is given, and I'd like to talk not only about the difficulties sometimes that come with that diagnoses, or maybe parents are seeing something and going, I don't know, maybe are we seeing that? And with homeschooling, it's harder because your child is not identified within the school. You
Mm.
kind of have to identify them yourself and then take them to get a diagnosis, if you choose to do that and if you feel it's beneficial for your student. But then there's so many things that are on the flip side, it- that are true gifts that come with that. And so I'd like to first talk about some of the things that are really difficult, or maybe are things that would be I'm trying to think of the word. They would just be things that would kind of go, oh, is that maybe what we're looking at? As far as a parent seeing some things and going, yeah, maybe this is actually what we're dealing with, and it isn't just a power struggle between me and my child, which is what I thought it was for a long time with my middle child, until I realized, oh yeah, no, he just can't do this, and he's trying to, work around it because of that difficulty.
Sure, sure. Well, I would say classic challenges with dyslexia are difficulty with the mechanical aspect of reading and writing, meaning
Hmm.
decoding words, reading fluency, spelling words, writing. It usually does not affect intelligence or comprehension. So oftentimes,
Mm.
a student who has dyslexia will be able to comprehend incredibly complex material that you read to them, but they might have trouble
Ah.
reading a very basic sentence on a page themselves. Now,
Mm.
sometimes their decoding challenge can affect their ability to comprehend what they're reading because they're focusing so much time and energy
Right.
sounding out each word. But
Mhm.
oftentimes they're very smart. They have the ability to comprehend complex material, but it's
Mm.
really teaching them the tools for how to build those mechanics of reading and writing. That's really typically
Yeah.
what's key with students with dyslexia.
Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. And so you could think that it is a comprehension, but if they're focusing so much on those words, then yeah, that it's not gonna make sense, or even be something they can build that full picture with, because really it's that mental picture that you're building
Mhm.
while you're decoding and adding all the little pieces together.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
And again, usually they have very strong auditory comprehension skills, in intelligence, so many great gifts, but
Mhm.
it's the mechanics that need some development.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where I know a lot of parents go to the Orton-Gillingham method, because it really does fill in all those gaps for decoding, and it's a great resource, and structured program for that.
It's an amazing resource and it truly does wonders, especially for students with dyslexia.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so let me wrong place here. Um, what about word retrieval? Um, with students with dyslexia. Is that common? That
Yeah, I mean, it certainly can be common. That is often something that we do see for students who have dyslexia. So we want to
Mhm.
work on building that skill as well and helping them to really kind of retrieve and identify the words that they're trying to use, both when writing and even orally.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. And I'm assuming across the board, it's not for every student, but some.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool. I know my child not only had dyslexia, but an auditory processing disorder. So even audiobooks we couldn't do. And it became like this nightmare for a parent trying to teach a child to read because even this reading out loud to him was difficult.
Right.
He ended up coming up with something in his teenage years. He can read like foreign films, all the captions for hours on end because the picture's up on the screen
Mm.
and comprehend all of it. And yet there was no other mode that he could get. Now as he's older, he's been able to adapt to like audiobooks and all of that and reading text too. But such a struggle. And I think we as parents can really beat ourselves up about this. And, I'm never going to get this solution for my child. It will come eventually. And yeah,
Well, and there's
it's
so
hard.
much technology and resources now that didn't exist
Yes.
before. But I think it's amazing that your son found a tool that works for him and that he's able to
Mm.
use visual cues or whatever it works for him in order to read and understand what he's reading. It's wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. It takes a little bit of extra time, and we just have to be patient with them and ourselves. Because there is no perfect solution. I think we're coming back around to what we were talking about at the beginning is that customized approach and how important it is that we don't get caught up in, well, this program is supposed to work and now my child should be reading and they should be loving to read too, by the way. And then it doesn't hit right away because we still have to customize a little bit more. And so to just keep plodding on with your child and working towards that goal is that they will read and they will love to read. And I think if you just keep moving forward with them, that eventually does happen. Yeah. So with dyslexia comes some great benefits as well. Can we talk about those for just a little while?
Absolutely. Well, dyslexia comes with so many gifts. So many of the great visionaries and leaders in the world have dyslexia.
Mm,
And I think one thing that's often unique is that individuals with dyslexia tend to be very creative. They're often really good artists. They're able to see things visually that others can't. In
mm,
fact, I have a colleague who's a spine surgeon,
mm,
incredibly successful spine surgeon. And I was speaking to him once, and he said that his entire, K to 12 years of schooling were a struggle for him because he
mm,
struggled so much with reading. But once he found surgery and was able to make it through medical school, it was
mm.
like a whole new world for him because it tapped into everything he was really good at. And he has someone who
Wow.
helps him with emails and a little bit with reading as needed. But he was
Hmm.
able to find a field that works for him and he's incredibly successful. So,
Yeah.
sometimes the challenge with dyslexia is getting through school. It's a challenge. But then
Mm,
once we get past that, there's so many gifts that will make them successful in life and successful
mm.
in the world. And it's really a matter of kind of channeling those skills into a field
Right.
and a career that will help them to be successful.
Absolutely. Yes. And like you said, they have to make it through. And I think that's the hardest thing as a parent is just getting them through and encouraging them enough to say, you know what, there's just so much more than the reading, the writing, the math. There's just you have all these gifts and
Mm.
your day will come.
And I didn't mean to belittle the K to 12 and make it sound like that's a struggle. It's a real struggle. But I think
It is.
also encouraging their strengths. If they're really good
Hmm.
at art, have them take an art class or
Yeah.
do artistic activities with other kids who
Hmm.
also like art. Or they might be really good at music. Encourage them to
Right.
take a music class or do acting or really kind of play up their strengths so that
Hmm.
they feel good about themselves in
Right.
certain ways that will help build their confidence.
Absolutely. Yes. And as homeschool parents, you have the ability also to make those courses.
Yeah.
And so add them to school. Don't start taking away things. I think the things that makes me cringe the most is when parents say, well, my child isn't finishing their reading or finishing their math, so I've taken everything else out
Mm,
so we can focus on that. And that just it like brings their world down to everything I can't do.
exactly.
And so think about that. And consider adding more give them more to do, more that they love to do, and you will see them flourish. Yes,
Absolutely. And it'll build their confidence and really help them.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, that confidence. We had talked about that earlier, and that low self-esteem, and just how it affects reading, and so yes, very, very important things.
It'll help them be successful in life in general if they can build confidence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not with reading, even if it's with acting or art or people skills or whatever it is, we
Hmm.
want to sustain what they're good at so that ultimately they'll find a way to be successful in life.
Yes, yeah, and they'll pursue in the end reading about those things because they want to get better at it, and
Exactly.
so it all comes around.
All
No, I'm amazed that, my we got together with my kids in January, and we did a family trip, and one of the places they wanted to go was the bookstore. And I thought, okay, family trip to the bookstore, let's go.
love that.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So, Emily, can you talk a little bit about EBL coaching and what you guys do? For those of you listening on the podcast, Emily's website is eblcoaching.com. And so I'd love for you to share about that.
Absolutely. Well, at EBL Coaching, we specialize in providing one-on-one tutoring to special education students, starting as young as pre-K and going all the way
Hmm.
through the adult level. We always
Wow.
start with an initial evaluation to really gauge what the student's strengths and weaknesses are and the areas that
Mm-hmm.
really need development. And then from there, I match that student with one of our tutors who specializes in what they need the most help with. And we do all skills. Of course, we do a lot of reading work with the Orton-Gillingham method, with the structured
Mm-hmm.
multisensory approach, but we also cover math and spelling and writing, executive functioning, study skills. So kind of really
Yes.
all core academic skills. And the key with our approach, as we discussed during the show, is really making the sessions diagnostic and prescriptive, always
Mm.
individualizing the instruction based on the needs of each student. We
Yeah.
do, of course, do the tutoring in person locally in our New Jersey, New York areas, but
Mm-hmm.
now help so many students internationally
That's
through our
amazing.
platform. And we've created such great technology and resources that we're able to use virtually. So the student
Mm.
and tutor can engage together as though they were in person. So it's really
Yeah.
allowed us to help so many more students beyond just the New York, New Jersey area.
Yeah, yeah, and there's so much need out there, and I'm just excited that that you're filling that need and continuing to grow in that too, and just using your expertise and years of work and research too to be able to help more families, more kids, and just getting beyond those struggles because they're so common. I think we when we start talking about it, people realize, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. There's a lot of kids out there that struggle, and there's help. So,
Help, resources, so much more than there ever was in the past. So it's
mhm.
really, there's so much value and tools out there that you can use with your child.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in connecting with Dr. Emily and her team, go to eblcoaching.com and just see what they have. She has a lot of good resources on your website too. And then you have some workbooks as well. That can they find the books on your website or
Yes, the books
um,
are on our website. There's an Orton-Gillingham workbook series. There's actually a full curriculum of books. And then also
awesome.
a multisensory math program that I've created for
Mhm.
foundational math skills like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and so on. And then a whole
Awesome.
writing and study skills program called Strategies for Study Success, which taps into
Mm.
writing, reading comprehension, note taking, test taking, all of those key skills as well. And those are all in our.
Very important. Okay, awesome. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been delightful to talk about reading and in a way that just is encouraging and supportive and really, giving parents specific tools on how to view it and how to approach it. And I think that's most important is that sometimes we can get this overall arching view of reading's good. And then we go, well, how do we go about it? And so you just as in summary, read, Read to your child, read with your child, read alongside your child, and then make it multisensory, and then use a structured program and get help if you need it. I mean, Dr. Emily has shared some great resources, and so that those are those top 4 strategies, and I just appreciate you for elaborating on those and why they're so important, how to make them work, and just that it's possible for any student. So it's exciting.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and it's been a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you and just the work you're doing. Keep it up. And I'm excited to hear about just your future endeavors and where your practice goes. And enjoy yourself in Texas too. Emily said she'll be in Texas presenting some research she's been doing. So that's exciting. Yeah. Well, next week we will be talking about nurturing the heart, empowering the soul, practical advice for homeschooling parents of special needs children with Terry McKee. She is the organizer of a special needs homeschooling expo that's going to be coming up at the end of June, and that SPED Homeschool is actually sponsoring. And Dr. Temple Grandin will be there as their main speaker. So we're super excited about partnering her with that. And so she's got some words of encouragement for you next week here on the show. So you'll want to come back for that and join us there. But thank you everyone for joining us live and for joining the conversation either on the recorded video or podcast. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. And until then, God bless everybody. And have a great week. Bye, everyone.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.